Hi Trigoners, these are notes 4.3, long division. Our objective, be able to divide polynomials using long division. So please take a look at number 1. F of x is the quantity x minus 1 multiplied by the quantity x plus 2. So please go ahead and solve the equation if that product is equal to 0 and then sketch a graph. Pause the video and give it a try. Alright, so we solve the equation x minus 1 equals 0, so x equals 1, or x plus 2 equals 0, so we have x equals negative 2. So we have 2 x-intercepts for this quadratic equation. One of them is at negative 2, one of them is at 1. So let's think about what that means. X minus 1 is a factor of f of x. X equals 1 is an x-intercept of the graph of f of x. X equals 1 is a 0 of f of x because when x is 1, the y-coordinate is 0. X equals 1 is a solution of the equation f of x equals 0. Similarly, x plus 2 is a factor of f of x. X equals negative 2 is an x-intercept of the graph of f of x. X equals 2 is a 0 of f of x because when x equals negative 2, the y-coordinate is 0. X equals negative 2 is a solution of the equation f of x equals 0. So for a polynomial function, let's go ahead and read what's in the box here. A polynomial function f of x has a factor x minus k if and only if f of k is 0. So again, x minus k is a factor of f of x. X equals k is an x-intercept of the graph of f of x. X equals k is a 0 of f of x. And x equals k is a solution of the equation f of x equals 0. So let's take a look at that first example. Number 2 is 4 a factor of 3024. All right, so let's review how we would, when we did long division with numbers. We could do 4 times 7 is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. Bring down the 2. 4 times 5. So that is, we added that up, that for 5 with our quotient. 5 times 4 is 20. Bring down the 4. 4 times 6 is 24. So we had a remainder of 0. So yes, 4 is a factor of 3024. So yes, 4 is a factor of 3024 because the remainder is 0. 3024 divided by 4 is 756. Let's try the next example. Is 32 a factor of 3587? So go ahead and pause the video and determine, is 32 a factor of 3587? Go ahead and use long division. Pause the video and give it a try. So 1 times 32 is 32. 35 minus 32 is 3. And bring the 8 down. And then multiply, let's see, 1 times 32. 38 minus 32 is 6. And bring down the 7. 2 times 32 is 64. So your remainder is 3. So is 32 a factor of 3587? It is not, because the remainder is not 0. So no, 32 is not a factor of 3587 because the remainder is not 0. And so here is our summary statement. 112 plus the remainder over the divisor. So we have 3587 is equal to 32. Or sorry, 3587 divided by 32 is equal to 112 plus 3 over 32. So again, we have a dividend, a divisor. The answer is the quotient. We have a remainder, and your summary statement is the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. So now we're going to do long division with polynomials. And the question is x minus 4 a factor of x cubed minus 9x squared plus 26x minus 24? So we're going to do x cubed minus 9x squared plus 26x minus 24, and we're going to, that is your dividend, your divisor is x minus 4. So what we're going to do is look at the first term, and you need to think of what you would multiply x by so that you end up with x cubed, because you want that term to cancel out. We would need to multiply by x squared, so that is going to be the first term in our quotient. So we multiply x squared times each term in the divisor. X squared times x is x to the third. X squared times negative 4 is negative 4x squared. Now we're subtracting. So sometimes when you get to the second term you forget, so I think it's safer if you put parentheses. So we're going to do x cubed minus x cubed, which is 0. That was our goal, to have that first term cancel. Negative 9x squared minus a negative 4x squared. That is negative 4x squared. Sorry, that's negative 9x squared minus a minus, so that's plus. So we have negative 5x squared. And bring down the rest of the terms in your dividend. So now for our next step, we're wondering, what do I multiply x by to end up with negative 5x squared? Because again, our goal is for that first term to cancel out. So that means that negative 5x is the next term in our quotient, and we're going to multiply negative 5x times each term in the divisor. So negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times negative 4 is plus 20x. And again, we're subtracting everything in that line, and we want to make sure that we subtract the entire expression. So the parentheses might help that you don't forget. We have negative 5x squared minus a negative 5x squared, which is 0. 26x minus 20x, which is 6x, and bring down the negative 24. So now we have 6x, and we want to know, what would you multiply x by to get 6x? So 6 is going to be that last term in our quotient. So 6 times each term in the divisor. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times negative 24 is negative 24. But again, you're subtracting the entire expression. So we have a remainder of 0. So you would say, yes, x minus 4 is a factor of x cubed minus 9x squared plus 26x minus 24. X minus 4 is a factor because the remainder was 0, so we know that the quotient is x squared minus 5x plus 6. Let's take a look at the next example. So now we'd like to know, is 3 an x-intercept of 2x cubed minus 5x squared plus 4x minus 12? So if x equals 3 is an x-intercept, that would mean that x minus 3 is a factor. So we are going to divide, here's our dividend, and our divisor will be x minus 3. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you could determine what would be that first term in your quotient. Choose 2x squared. So 2x squared times each term in your divisor would be 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. And let's just make sure everyone understands what you're doing. You are multiplying 2x squared times the divisor, each term of the divisor, which is x minus 3. And then we have 2x squared times negative 3, so that's minus 6x squared. So remember, we're really subtracting that entire expression, so it might help if you use parentheses. So we have 2x cubed minus 2x cubed, which is, we wanted that term to cancel out, that was our goal. And negative 5x squared plus 6x squared is x squared. And now we bring down the rest of the terms, the dividend, and you have to make a decision. Go ahead and pause the video and decide what would be the next term in your quotient. All right, so we're going to put x as the next term in the quotient, x times each term in the divisor. So that's x squared minus 3x. The parentheses hopefully will help us to remember that we're subtracting the entire expression. X squared minus x squared is 0. 4x plus 3x is 7x. And negative 12 minus 0 is, we just have the negative 12. So now our last term in the quotient is 7. And we will subtract. So you will have a remainder. 21 minus 12 is 9. So 3 is not an x-intercept. X minus 3 is not a factor. So our summary statement is 2x squared plus x plus 7 plus the remainder over the divisor. And that is equal to 2x cubed minus 5x squared plus 4x minus 12 over x minus 3. So again, the dividend over the divisor is equal to our quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. There's our summary statement. So no, 3 is not an x-intercept because the remainder was not 0. Okay, let's do another example. So we have a polynomial divided by a polynomial. Why don't you go ahead and set it up and get started and see if you could find that first step. Go ahead and pause the video, please. Okay, did you notice that this particular problem, we had to put a placeholder for the x cubed because it was missing a cubic term. There was no x cubed term. So we'll put 0x cubed and we'll do, let's see, what would we multiply x squared by to get x to the fourth? And you would say x squared. So that's the first term in our quotient, and we'll multiply x squared by each term in the divisor. Hopefully those parentheses will help you remember that you're subtracting the entire expression. So we have x to the fourth minus x to the fourth. That term cancels out. We have negative x cubed, and we have negative 2x squared plus 2x squared. So the x squared terms cancel out, and we'll bring down the 3x and the minus 6. So now we would say, what do you multiply x squared by to get x to the cube, or x to the third? Go ahead and pause the video and decide what will be the next term in your quotient. Okay, make sure, I think I forgot to put my negative sign there, because we had 0x to the third minus x cubed. There we go. See, that's, again, that's very hard to remember that you distribute that negative, so you're subtracting each term. Okay, so now we have, hopefully you put negative x. So we have negative x times each term in the divisor, which is negative x cubed, negative x squared, plus 2x, and we're subtracting. So negative x cubed minus a negative x cubed, that cancels out. So we have minus a negative x squared, which is positive x squared, 3x minus 2x, which is x, and minus x. So now we have to decide for our last term in the quotient is going to be 1. So we have x squared plus x minus 2, and we're subtracting. So we have x squared minus x squared, that cancels out. X minus x is 0. And negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So x squared plus x minus 2 is not a factor because the remainder is not 0. And we can write our summary statement. Our quotient. Okay, so the quotient is x squared minus x plus 1 plus the remainder over the divisor. All right, let's take a look at the next example. So we are going to divide x cubed plus 2x squared minus x minus 2 by x squared minus 1. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do the first step on your own. Give it a try. All right, so x times x squared is x to the third. X times negative 1 is negative x. So we have 2x squared plus 0x minus 2. And for the next term, you would multiply, you would need 2, and you'd multiply 2 by x squared, and 2 times negative 1. So you end up with a remainder of 0. So yes, x squared minus 1 is a factor because the remainder is 0. But there's something else I'm wondering if you were thinking of. Did you notice that x squared minus 1 is x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 1? So let's think about this. What would happen if we did it a different way? And we decided to first do x squared, do long division with an x minus 1. Go ahead and pause the video and long divide with x minus 1, and then a second step, x plus 1, and see if you get the same answer. Give it a try. Okay, so notice first I used long division, and here's my dividend, here's my divisor, and we ended up with a quotient of x squared plus 3x plus 2. And then for my second step, I used long division, and x plus 1 was the divisor. And notice we ended up with the same answer as x plus 2 if we divided, over here, if we divided our dividend by x squared minus 1. So that's just another alternate method. All right, let's take a look at this last example. We're asked if x equals negative 2, is x equal negative 2 a solution of this equation? So they're asking, is x plus 2 a factor? So we are going to go ahead and multiply x by x cubed. So go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and find that first line and go ahead and subtract. So x cubed is the first term in our quotient. X cubed times every term in the divisor. X to the fourth plus 2x cubed, big subtraction sign right here. We're really subtracting the entire expression. So x to the fourth cancels out, and the 2x cubed minus 2x cubed is also 0. So we bring down the next terms in our dividend, and we decide that we would have to multiply by negative x. So negative x times x is negative x squared. Negative x times 2 is negative 2x. We're subtracting the entire expression. So negative x squared plus x squared cancels out. Negative 2x plus 2x cancels out. We end up with negative x minus, or negative 6 minus 0, which is negative 6, so that is our remainder. So is x equals negative 2 a solution of this equation? No. No, it is not, because the remainder is not 0. And the summary statement is the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. So x cubed minus x plus negative 6 over x plus 2. So again, x equals negative 2 was not a solution of the equation because because the remainder was not 0. Great job, everybody.